If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button to keep up to date with all my latest videos.
Hi guys, well, welcome to Life of Gaz, and today I'm fishing down here in front of the tower next to North Pier. Now as you can see, I've waded out a little bit, and that's because I think I'm stood on a sandbank that may uncover, but it's very close to low tide and I might end up just standing in a puddle all the day. Now having said that, it is easterly, but there is a bit of an edge on it if you look behind me over here, and with any luck that may just hold a fish or two.
So first things first, looking out over the sea here, you can see I've got a little bit of a gully in front of me, then a sandbank, and then I've got the fishable water behind that. So what I'll do is set up here on the sand and then cross it over onto the sandbank itself and fish there as the tide falls. Crossing these gullies can be a bit hazardous, so you do have to have your wits about you, because they can suddenly have little holes in them which drop off fairly deep, and I know I've done it before where you put your foot down a hole and you go from a foot of water up to say like 2 foot of water, and that sometimes can result in you dropping all your gear into the water itself, which you don't want to do. I've made it safely across that gully and put my tripod down. You can see the rigs that I'm using are the 2-hook flapper rigs, and these rigs, they're literally there to see what fish are about. Now on the rigs themselves, they've got size 2.0 hooks, which are a fairly sort of standard hook for me to use, as most fish around here can take these, so it does open up my catch rate quite significantly. Now I know I said 2-hook flapper rigs, but as you can see they're actually 3-hook flapper rigs on here. Now you may notice as well that I'm using the 7-ounce weight, the green top anchor weights, and normally the weight that I'm using depends on the wind direction and speed. As the heavier the weight is, the more it'll push through the wind itself. I got no need to use these heavier weights, and they're really only on there because I forgot to change over to the lighter weights from fishing a rough sea to a not quite so rough sea like this one. For example, if I was fishing into a very heavily westerly wind, then the 7-ounce weight would do great. And the fact that today's easterly, I could drop down to a 4 or even a 5, and that would do the job just as well. Quick run through the baits I'm using today. You can see I've got some frozen worm tipped off with some squid, a little bit of sand eel in there as well to see who I can tempt out. Now unfortunately, prior to this trip there has been quite a lot of rain down, and the area of coast which I fish around Blackpool has got 2 quite significant rivers that dump in either end. So you've got the Ribble down at Lytham, and then up at Fleetwood you've got the Wyre, and there are other rivers that dump into the bay as well. But this means that once the rain starts, it tends to push lots of grasses down from those rivers, and this meant that unfortunately today was an exercise in casting and retrieving very quickly, picking whatever grass had caught on my line and then recasting again. Now why the cast rate had to be so quick today and not leaving the baits out there to soak for long times is I always feel that once the baits start covering up with the grass, that I don't ever catch anything on them, whether the fish are suspicious, they don't like the grass itself, or whether it masks the bait entirely. I don't know. All I know is that I've never really caught fish when I've got weed wrapped up my hook lengths and my line. While still waiting for my first fish, it gave me a chance just to watch some of the wildlife following themselves around the beach here, and one of the things which I noticed was this oyster catcher feeding down behind me, and you can see that the oyster catcher himself, he's checking out all the debris that's washed up, because after this recent storm which we'd had, there had actually been quite a few cockles which had been unearthed from the seabed itself, and washed up. Now you can see some of these cockleback shells are empty, and the oyster catcher can basically distinguish that very quickly. And then others, the oyster catcher investigates over a little bit of a longer period, trying to relieve the meat from those shells. Now I fished for about 2 hours down, the tide had turned, so it was a good chance for me to cross back over that gully and to actually sit on the safer side of the beach, because the last thing you want is for those channels to start filling up. But even in doing this, I still managed to pull in more big chunks of weed. And after around about 2¼ hours of fishing, I suddenly got my first bite. It was actually a fairly significant bite, and it did feel like there was a little bit of weight there. Now there is a reason for this, even though the fish was not that big itself, and that's because as I was dragging this fish in, I just foul hooked it. Now foul hooking the fish obviously can create more resistance, and this also means that you can feel the fish as you're not pulling it in from the mouth, or you're pulling it in from in the middle, so the fish is trying to swim away from you all the time. And this gives you the impression that the fish is possibly a little bit better than it actually is. And also you may notice from the length of time that I'm retrieving, this was a cast where I'd waded out over that gully onto the bank, cast out, and then waded back in. Now this can be a little bit tricky sometimes, so I wouldn't recommend doing it if the tide's really pushing through, but today it wasn't too bad. And eventually we retrieved all of that line, and the fish started to show itself through the surface self. And you can see as the fish had shown itself that it was a little rockling. In fact, it wasn't a bad rockling, it was probably around about 4 and a bit ounces, which is fairly decent size. Now in recent years I've managed to catch rockling around about sort of a 1.5 to 2 ounce mark, but for some reason this year there seems to be quite a few of the larger rockling about. You see there where the fish was foul hooked just through the side, which makes you ask the question of when the fish was caught, did it intentionally try and take the bait, or did it just happen to swim past, miss the bait entirely, and just drag itself on the hook? Now unhooking this fish, he looked alright and swam off to fight another day, so I hope this fish survived and done well. At this point that channel will become a little bit on the risky side to cross, so from now on out I just started casting from the shoreline itself and casting over just beyond those surf. Whilst tracking back I felt another little rattle and a knock on the other rod. Unfortunately I couldn't strike into this one straight away because I was actually walking back out of the sea at the time. But it meant that it gave the bait a little bit longer to soak, and this actually resulted in a double hookup, and you'll see them come in a minute. Now I've fished in total for around about 3 hours 15 minutes on this session, and I managed to catch all the fish which I caught in the whole session, all within the space of 10 minutes of each other. And this was the only point in the entire session where I didn't bring a rig back, which was covered in weed as well. And there they are coming up through the surf, a little double shot of whiting. The first one that I unhooked was the smallest out of the two, and that one I'd unhooked and managed to release without issue, so that was all good. And to get that one to swim off, I just give it a little stroke down the side of his tail when it's in the water, and that one was gone. Now the bigger fish of the two, unfortunately, was a little bit more tricky to unhook, and I wrestled the hook to get it out. Now the fish survived and swam off to fight another day, but was a little bit disorientated swimming around in the surf, so whilst I put the fish down and sent him off on his way, he turned round, come back up the beach, so I had to turn the fish back round and try and re-release him again, to which case he went off absolutely fine.
Okay guys, well unfortunately that's it for this episode today. The fishing is starting to slow down through the winter fish, but the summer fish hopefully are going to be on their way at some point soon. But if you've liked this channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button down here. Check out my last fishing video over here and my playlist up top.